So, not only in Buddhism, but in the annals of storytelling in different cultures, from early man to modern, Nichiren is going to point out that this scenario in the Lotus Sutra isn't really so unique. As we mature in life as humans in the modern era, I've talked about this before, we go through stages, so to speak. It's one way to label them. But after a certain amount of time passes, say 5 years or 10 years, there are certain understandings, insights that we gain about the nature of being a human being. Certainly within our cultures, within our land, within our so on and so forth. In fact, that insight doesn't come until later in life, especially if you've had the opportunity to travel, which is a tremendous teacher. I recommend it to anyone, especially in your youth when you have the easiest opportunity to pick up and move, go live in another culture, another country, even if it's within your own country, other states in the United States, live in Canada, live in Mexico, live within the cultural realities of another people's. It's a tremendous education. It's not an education in mathematics or in English literature. It's an education in the sentient mind and how being a human being, being this animal that we are, this species that we are, has very basic requirements, right? Eating, defecating, sleep, shelter, sex. There's this, everything else is just complications constructed of the particular situation we're in, the conditions, our tendencies, the tendencies around us, our environment. How do we all, whether it's language, dress, physical being, environment, desert, forest, trees, mountains, cold, hot, always the resolution is eat, defecate, sleep, shelter, sex, and then it gets individual, right? Pleasure. Just got to satisfy those basic needs. But it's the way in which we perceive the conditions and tendencies and how we use our abilities as we understand them that we grow. Okay, we all know this, so I'm repeating myself. Why do I say this? Again, these little introductions, they have a purpose, right? So, at some point, you may find yourself as gaining a certain amount of expertise about some particular thing. You've gotten pretty good at solving this. I don't care if it's cooking the perfect burger or making meals out of very little, okay? You've gotten good at something. And you can recall, not that we do this a lot, but every now and again we think back on our lives, don't we? We reflect. And there's always something that happened that we can point to and go, you know, that's really what helped me understand how to do this, whatever it is that I'm doing now. Had it not been for that, whatever expertise I've gained, I'd probably just be plodding along doing it the same old way. Maybe it was somebody showing me something and I went, oh crap, that makes so much sense. How could I have not figured that out? But it changed me from then on, right? Or maybe I stumbled onto something and went, wow, that works, right? And then you're the person who induces or enlightens somebody else, right? So this story in the Lotus Sutra, where Shakyamuni is trying once again, only in the Lotus Sutra, adamantly shocking people's minds into understanding that he, Shakyamuni, isn't the Buddha. That Buddha is not only something he awakened, understood, attained, but that Buddha that he attained has always been there. That potential to understand the engine of life not only has always been there with the existence of a sentient mind, but that every sentient mind has the same opportunity, just needs to do it. Wait, no. You became that. That's amazing. For me, I'll work toward it all my life, I promise. But to be that, I can't, no. Right? People just, they're so attached to their limitations. How often have you heard that? In sport, in math, in anything. The only reason you can't do something is because you're attached to not being able to do it. Right? We've been hearing that from psychology and philosophy and on and on and on. Shakyamuni knew this 3,000 years ago. Not because people were aiming for more, but because people were stuck in this constant elaboration of mysticism and magic because it's just too hard to be human. It's just too hard to have a life of opportunity and that would be if only I... Where did that mindset begin? It's like walking along and stepping in mud and your shoe is stuck in the mud and you just stop walking. Oh, well, this is my lot in life. I'll pray that somebody saves me because I'm got a shoe stuck in the mud. It's over for me. What? You know what? Not only can you pull your shoe out of the mud, but even if you don't want to accept that potential, because it's potential, it's always there, then pull your damn foot out of the boot and walk without it. It doesn't have to stop your life. Whatever level of negotiation you have to make with your stuck, attached, samsaric mind, move on. It's only an obstacle if you make it an obstacle. Wait, what? Yeah, see, this is the problem. This is the core of the problem. And so in the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni says, gloves off. Look. And when the bodhisattvas from under the earth show up in the story, they're future bodhisattvas, you and I, and Manjushri and the others are going, who are these guys? And Shakyamuni says, my Buddha-ness instructed these folks long before any of us existed. He's not traveling through time and doing all that. What he's saying is, what they are going to achieve in the future, just as those who have achieved it in the far distant past have all achieved it through the same thing, which I am expressing to you and which you can express to yourself and others. This is what he's saying in this story. However it's translated, however convoluted the language, this is the lesson. It's in there. But I I empathize with you trying to get through the mire of subtle little language tropes that aren't working. But if you look at the story in its entirety, it's that simple. He's enforcing the idea, trying to get these people unstuck, that it's not he who is Buddha. That Buddha is something he's attained, but the achievement of Buddha that's an illusion, because Buddha's that perceptive mind is always available as potential. All you need do is invoke it. And Nichiren, seeing this blindingly clearly, is like, here's the story in pictorial form, so you can focus on its key point. Be Buddha. Be Buddha. That's what Myoho Renge Kyo is. But what is being Buddha? Namu. I, committed to, now invoking Buddha. That's what Namu Myoho Renge Kyo is. What should your attitude be? What should you be thinking about? What kind of mind should you have as you begin that practice? And the answer is, not that mind. That mind is samsara. You're not going to get rid of it. But that's not, why are you concerned about that? You're only concerned, I hear invoking Buddha. That's it. It's really that simple. Everything else is distraction. Everything else. And so Nichiren now is going to talk about, look, this isn't a new way of teaching this. Look at this story. Look at that story. But Maitreya and the other great bodhisattvas were further perplexed by these words of the Buddha when Shakyamuni Buddha preached the Flower Garland Sutra, Dharma Wisdom, and countless other bodhisattvas appeared in the assembly. Maitreya and the others wondered who they could be. But Shakyamuni, and I wish it was written this way, it just keeps saying Buddha, 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 which adds to this misunderstanding, right? If these authors really understood the words of Buddhism, they would identify when this is Shakyamuni speaking and when it is enlightenment and Buddha-ness that is speaking. Albeit via Shakyamuni, but there's a difference, isn't there? We're not trying to achieve Shakyamuni. We're trying to achieve Buddha-ness. Your Buddha, my Buddha, Buddha. But Shakyamuni Buddha said, they are my good friends. And we know what good friends are in Buddhism, right? There are those who assist, who support, who enjoin our path to enlightenment, as they do themselves. Itai Doshin, many in body, one in mind. We're all working toward Buddha-ness, Buddha experience. And they thought this must be true, Maitreya and the bunch. Later, when the Buddha preached the Great Collection Sutra at the Great Treasure Chamber and the larger Wisdom Sutra at White Heron Lake, great bodhisattvas appeared in the assembly, and Maitreya and the others supposed that they too were good friends of Shakyamuni Buddha. All right, all of these sutras introduce personages. Yeah? We've talked about this ad nauseum. And these personages seem new in the context of that sutra because they're different mindsets and different ways of coming to, right? The Innumerable Meaning Sutra or the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra is all about this. Before the intro to the Lotus Sutra is an exemplar of potential. It has innumerable forms because potential isn't a parameter, it's wide open. Innumerable, immeasurable, how do you say it? Potential, right? And so each time these personages of Maitreya and the others who are followers of Shakyamuni Buddha, whenever he brings about one of these new sutras and he talks about the audience and there's new members in the audience, they take it for granted that, well, they're just more of his buddies. We just didn't know them. They don't understand that he's talking about the mind and its potential. They're still identifying these personages as, it's funny, a personage identifying other personages as identities when they themselves are personages. It just, it's a little bit melon twisting, yeah. The magic of words. But these great bodhisattvas who had newly appeared from under the earth looked incomparably more venerable than those earlier bodhisattvas, right? Because these bodhisattvas are introduced as superior, right? This Shakyamuni said, all these bodhisattvas says, we'll take your teachings into the future. We'll make sure to propagate it. And Shakyamuni says, thanks, but you're not ready. What? Well, I'm going to get these bodhisattvas from under the earth, these hundreds of thousands in the future. They'll be ready. Oh, well, obviously they're superior. Whoa, let's see these bodhisattvas, yeah? One might conclude that they were the teachers of Shakyamuni Buddha. Oh, finally, he says Shakyamuni Buddha. And yet, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, had caused them for the first time to set their minds on the way. Wait a minute. How can you have taught these future bodhisattvas how to practice? There's a time problem here, right? It's confusing. Poor Maitreya. And when they were still immature, had converted them and made them his disciples. Well, you're not there. How? Shakyamuni, you've only reached enlightenment yourself 40 years ago. How do you have time to do all this? Right? That's actually the question Maitreya puts to him. It was this that Maitreya and the others found so profoundly perplexing. They weren't understanding, were they? Prince Shotoku of Japan was the son of Emperor Yomei, the 32nd sovereign. When he was 6 years old, elderly men came to Japan from the states of Pakchi and Koguryo in Korea and from the land of China. The 6-year-old prince thereupon explained, quote, "These are my disciples." And the old men turned, pressed their palms together in reverence and said, "You are our teacher." This was a strange happening indeed. No, it wasn't. Again, the same lesson. In this story, the 6-year-old recognizes that his position, his achievement, his condition at the time was an inspiration and leadership of and for these elder statements. Just like I was saying in the introduction here. Sometimes we have aha moments that come from unlikely sources, but they're no less insight, right? Sometimes, have you ever heard the statement, "from the mouth of babes"? What do you think that's about? Sometimes, in the midst of adult discussions, a little child with scarcely any life experience will say some basic truth that will shatter the conversation of all the adults. And the adults will look at one another and go, "Oh, that's irrefutable. Damn. Let's back off of our grand intellects and understand the child just kind of took us asunder. All of our machinations and attachments and opinions, and ultimately, yeah, the kid is right. Right? That's what it's about. It's the same illusion that Shakyamuni is trying to break in his followers of the day. This is what he's been railing against the Hinayana groups for years. You guys, you're not getting it. That's why the word merits is used so much in these translations. Not because of a badge of merit, it's because the merit is what people are adhered to. What Shakyamuni is saying is that merit is a self, it's one of the three bodies, reward. It's a self-manifested thing. Of course you feel rewarded when you have an insight, when you see something clearly anew. Isn't that rewarding? Isn't that what you would call a reward? You don't have to. You could call it something else. But words being what they are, right? There's a similar story to be found in a secular work, Nichiren continues. According to this work, a man was walking along a road when he saw by the roadside a young man of about 30 who was beating an old man about 80 years old. When he asked the reason, the young man replied, "This old man is my son." You see, this mechanism of teaching is all over the place. This is not unique to Shakyamuni. But Nichiren is pointing out how, if you really want to understand the Lotus Sutra, do you understand the expedient means? The way of teaching a lesson without being literal, but getting the meaning of it, deriving, right, the meaning. Bodhisattva Maitreya continues to doubt, and he says, quote, "World-honored one, when the thus come one was crowned prince, you left the palace of the Shakas and sat in the place of meditation not far from the city of Gaya, and there attained supreme perfect enlightenment." You found it. You attained it. Barely 40 years or more have passed since then. World-honored one, how in that short time could you have accomplished so much work as a Buddha? Some translations, the Buddha, right? They're not getting it. Shakyamuni isn't talking about Shakyamuni here. He's trying to get them to understand that what he found, what he awakened, this Buddha, is extant in everything. Every sentient mind can awaken to Buddha. It's not him. And that's timeless. The various bodhisattvas who had attended the numerous assemblies held in the 40-some years since the Buddha preached the Flower Garland Sutra had raised doubts at each assembly, asking the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, to dispel these doubts for the benefit of the multitude. But this present doubt was the greatest doubt of all. It surpassed even the doubt entertained by the Great Adornment and the others of the 80,000 bodhisattvas described in the Immeasurable Meanings Sutra, when the Buddha, Shakyamuni, after declaring in the previous 40-some years of his teaching that enlightenment was something that required countless kalpas to attain, now announced that it could be attained immediately, quickly, in a moment. Again, the story is that Buddha, this enlightened state, this clarity, transcends time. Because all of the universe, the engine of life, is the subject of clarity of the Buddha mind, the mind awakening to all processes that are the universe and our little place within it are all instantiations of the exact same energy. No difference, no time, space. It's all the same expression. Our expression, because of the emergence of the sentience about it, can witness it. How amazing is that? No time to get stuck in the mud. Keep walking. So, it's all of time, and it's when you have all of time, time is irrelevant. Right? According to the meditation on the Buddha Infinite Life Sutra, King Ajatasattu, led astray by Devadatta, imprisoned his father and was on the point of killing his mother, Lady Vaidehi. Reprimanded by the court ministers Jivaka and Chandraprabha, however, he spared his mother's life. At that time, she begged that the Buddha appear to her, and that she began by posing this question, quote, "What offense have I committed in the past that I should have given birth to this evil son? What did I do wrong? And world-honored one, through what cause have you come to be related to a person as evil as your cousin Devadatta? How could there be such great potential in the engine of life for amazement and untroubled maximal potential expression of life, while these obstacles, these negative things continue to proliferate? How could the two coexist? All right? We know that. We know that question, don't we? Of the doubts raised here, the second is the more perplexing. The question of why the Buddha should be related to an evil person like Devadatta. Now, see the slippery slope here? This is Shakyamuni related to Devadatta. That's a samsaric reality. But the Buddha-ness, by association, is also related to Devadatta. But we're talking about Devadatta's actions, his mind. Remember, Buddhism is about the mind. A wheel-turning king, we are told, is never born into the world along with his enemies, nor is the god Chakra to be found in the company of demons. Well, that's bullshit. One wouldn't exist without the other. But okay, let's go with the lesson. The Buddha had been a merciful personage for countless kalpas. Personaged. Yet the fact that Shakyamuni was born together with his arch enemy might make one doubt whether he was indeed a Buddha at all. Well, he wasn't. He was a bodhisattva following the Buddha way, but Buddha is accessible to all. He didn't, in his samsaric human body, right? He didn't contain Buddha. It wasn't like an extra finger. Buddha is in the mind. The Buddha, however, did not answer the question of the Lady Vaidehi. Therefore, if one reads and recites only the Meditation Sutra and does not examine the Devadatta chapter of the Lotus Sutra, one will never know the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter in the Lotus Sutra being that Devadatta too has Buddha-ness. He's just acting a fool in his samsaric attachments, right? Begrudging his cousin, competing like an animal, hungry for fame, the lower worlds. Those worlds are samsaric. Buddha-ness, that's why Buddha-ness is in all the worlds, because ultimately all of the worlds, all of the realms are samsaric attachments. And Buddha-ness frees you from them. Frees you from your attachment to them. The goings-on of life are the goings-on of life. The engine is just sputtering away. But how you engage with it is everything. Attitude, intent. In the Nirvana Sutra, Bodhisattva Kashyapa posed 36 questions to Shakyamuni Buddha. But even these cannot compare to this question posed by Maitreya. If the Buddha had failed to dispel Maitreya's doubts, the sacred teachings of his entire life, so we're talking about Shakyamuni now, would have amounted to no more than froth on the water, and all living beings would have remained tangled in the snare of doubt. That is why it was so important for him to preach the lifespan chapter. Now I want to point out something else here that you may not have thought of before. That when we chant, we sit down in front of our Botsudan, we stare at the Myoho characters in our mandala, our portal to Gohonzon. We manifest Buddha, the mind of Buddha, the clarity of understanding. Even if in our samsaric mind we can't identify it, we inculcate it into our lives because it is our potential to do so. We are invoking, not embracing, but engaging a natural aspect of our mind that otherwise we obfuscate with the other consciousnesses that are based on things and physical, the worlds of samsara, yeah? So in a very real way, we are transmigrating from our samsaric senses to a clear, unobstructed instantiation of full potential to not only experience, but to do with as we would from that perspective, which takes us into the next moment, the next moment, the next moment, yeah? Maintaining that portal open as we then re-engage with samsara is of vital importance because everything changes. As our view of the world changes, so does the world change right back at us because the world is us. The environment and self are not two separate things. They're mentally separated, but Buddha-ness reconnects. Therefore, how could there be dissonance? So, when he says these things about dispelling doubt, the Buddha dispelling doubt, it's not somebody that's prayed to that comes down from some magical cloud and says, have doubt no more. It's your attainment of Buddha that clears the doubt in your samsaric mind. This is all happening in your mind. I remind you again, all of this flowery storytelling and so forth is about this mechanism of your mind. Later, when the Buddha preached the lifespan chapter, he said, quote, in all the worlds, the heavenly and human beings and Asuras all have confidence that the present Shakyamuni Buddha, after leaving the palace of the Shakyas, seated himself in the place of meditation not far from the city of Gaya, and there attained supreme perfect enlightenment, end quote. This passage expresses the view held by all the great bodhisattvas and the rest of the multitude from the time of the Buddha's first preaching at the place of enlightenment until his preaching of the Peaceful Practices chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Right? This is where all of your minds are, he's saying. Quote, but good men, good friends, strong, committed students, those who seek the way. It has been immeasurable, boundless, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, millions of nayutas of kalpas. And there it says, since I. But what it should say is, since Buddha-ness has been in effect, has been available, has been potentially there. It doesn't start and end with me, Shakyamuni. It is the fundamental truth of the engine of life. All you need to do is awaken to it. Know it. Inculcate it into your thinking every single moment of the day. It will change your life. Not because your life is different, but because your engagement with it has changed. In 3 places, the Flower Garland Sutra says that the Buddha attained enlightenment for the first time in his present existence. Shakyamuni Buddha, that is. In the Agama Sutras, he speaks of having attained the way for the first time in his present existence. Shakyamuni. The Vimalakirti Sutra states, quote, for the first time the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, and in the Great Collection Sutra, quote, it is 16 years since the thus come one first attained the way. This is all stories of Shakyamuni. In the Mahavarachana Sutra, quote, long ago when I sat in the place of meditation, end quote. In the Benevolent King Sutra, quote, 29 years since his enlightenment, end quote. In the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, the opening to the Lotus, quote, in the past I sat upright in the place of meditation, and in the Expedient Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra itself, the 2nd chapter, right? I first sat at the place of meditation, end quote. But now all these passages have been exposed as gross falsehoods, misunderstandings, misuse, engagements of expedient means by this single pronouncement in the Lifespan chapter. It's no wonder Nichiren focuses his entire enlightenment and propagation efforts on this amazing revelation in the Lifespan chapter, where Shakyamuni finally puts an end to this misunderstanding. That misunderstanding had a purpose in leading people toward enlightenment, but now the games are over. The teaching to your potential over. Now in the Lotus Sutra, I'm telling you how it really is. How I attained Buddhahood myself, and how all of you can do the same, because it's not unique to me. It was quite a shock, yeah? When Shakyamuni Buddha revealed that he had gained enlightenment in the far distant past, that Buddha-ness existed since time without beginning, is what it should say, it became apparent that all the other Buddhas were emanations of Shakyamuni. So all those other stories about Mahavarachana and Amida and all these other Buddhas, they were just stories to engage the students from different points of view, and that Buddha-ness has no definition, no person, no identity. It is an experience equal and varied to all sentient minds, yeah? When Shakyamuni preached the earlier sutras and the first half or theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra, the other Buddhas were pictured as standing on an equal footing with Shakyamuni, right? In the ceremony in the sky. after completing their respective practices and disciplines. Therefore, the people who take one or another of these Buddhas as their object of devotion, their goal, customarily look down on Shakyamuni Buddha. See, this is the misunderstanding of attachments to persons rather than the law. The law is Buddha-ness. But if you're going to attach, hang your hat on, I'm going to be like Mahavajarjana. Well, Mahavajarjana is an invention. It's a story to lead you to Buddha-ness. Hang your hat on Buddha-ness, not identification. So hard to teach people. We hang on with deep, deep claws, yeah? But now it becomes apparent that Vairochana Buddha, who is described in the Flower Garland Sutra as being seated on the lotus pedestal, and the various Buddhas who appear in the sutras of the correct and equal in the wisdom period, such as Mahavajarjana Sutra, are all, in fact, followers of Shakyamuni Buddha. They've all simply gone the way of Shakyamuni's enlightenment. They're just different versions, different paths, different life experiences leading to the same ends. The full expression of potential within the karmic freight trains of individuals. When Shakyamuni Buddha attained the way at the age of 30, he seized the Saha world away from the great heavenly king Brahma and the devil king of the sixth heaven, who had both ruled it previously and made it his own. Bingo! Does that statement make sense now? I'll read it again slowly and think about this. Right? In the mind. When Shakyamuni Buddha attained the way at the age of 30, when he awakened to Buddha-ness, he seized the Saha world away. This world, this samsaric world, this world of physical experience, he seized it away from the identified forces of these previous ideologies under the King Brahma, right? And the devil king of the sixth heaven, the maker, the fabricator of obstacles and misery, who had both ruled it previously. The Saha world, his Saha experience, his samsaric human experience, was ruled by these ideas of forces out of his control, out of your control. And he made it his own. Oh, I'm in charge. That's Buddha-ness. That's awakening the Gohonzon mind and seeing everything anew as not happening to us, but happening congruent with us. And it's our choice in mind as to how to engage with this amazing thing called life. We're not victims. Life isn't happening to us. Life doesn't suck and then you die. Life is your opportunity to live. How simple is that? Oh my goodness. Why didn't I get that before? Just too busy hanging on to my possessions, to what I know. I mean, that one sentence. In the earlier sutras and the theoretical teachings of the Lotus Sutra, he called the regions of the 10 directions pure lands and spoke of the present world as an impure land. Right? It talks about that in the Vimalakirti as well. But now in the lifespan chapter, he has reversed this, revealing that this world is the true land Right here and now, where you are, is the Buddha land in the mind. And that the so-called pure lands of the 10 directions are impure lands where provisional lands. Your imagination of these other places, it's just your imagination. It's your preoccupation. It's where you form your opinions and discern and identify yourself. But in truth, the universe is yourself. You're all of it. All of it is you. Take control. Be an observer. Walk in the midst. Be a fish in the water. A fish doesn't worry about the water. It worries about swimming and doing whatever it needs to do those basic things I started in the intro to talk about, yeah? Without obstacle. Without inventing limitations. Where are we time-wise? All right, time to wrap it up. Since the Buddha of the lifespan chapter is revealed as the Buddha who attained enlightenment in the remote past and all the other Buddhas as his emanations, it follows that not only the great bodhisattvas whom Shakyamuni himself taught in his transient status, in other words, not Shakyamuni, Buddha-ness, but the great bodhisattvas from other realms who were taught by the Buddhas in their own realms, their own enlightenment, are also, in fact, disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha, or the teachings of Buddha by Shakyamuni, the Lord of Teachings. If among all, that's why it says the Lord of Teachings, right? If among all the numerous sutras this lifespan chapter should be lacking, it would be as though there were no sun or moon in the sky, no supreme ruler of the nation, no gems in the mountains and rivers, and no spirit in human beings. If it were not for this teaching of the lifespan chapter, where Shakyamuni finally tries to nail down the idea that Buddha-ness is a timeless, perceptive shift that all of us, because we have sentient minds, simply need to switch it on, experience it, then all of the teachings would be just so much mythology and blah, 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 blah. The lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra is a crack in the universe. It's a huge, I mean, I say aha moments all the time, but we're talking about an aha moment on the scale of the entire universe. If it were not for that chapter, Nichiren is saying Buddhism would just be another well-crafted story. It wouldn't have the earth-shattering potential that it obviates. Namo Myo Renge-kyo, my friends. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Please do that right now if you haven't already. It helps to grow this channel and our Sangha. So thank you immensely for that. If you can, and if you find use for the books that I've put together, the assemblages of teachings under certain, or the mandala itself, you can download it all from threefoldlotus.com. It'll link you to Lulu, and you can download a PDF or ebook, right? Or get the print books. All of these actions. Go, if you can, on Patreon. If you can make a regular donation or through PayPal, or even just a singular donation, every little bit helps to add to the research potential here, what I can do, what I can find. Some of these books that I find are hundreds of dollars, not all of them, but I want to keep feeding myself all of these different scholars excavations of the Buddhist teachings, because ultimately they all, whether they're skewed from cultural bias or whatever, the truth in them keeps shining right through. And if nothing else, those different machinations around the story of Buddhist teaching and Buddhist enlightenment offer different perspectives. We all learn things in our own individual ways. And I try my hardest, and by reading different translations and different sources, to come up with different ways of accessing this constant truth. That gives me great confidence. And if I can share that confidence with you to do the same, then that's what Sangha is about, right? Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I'll let you go. Thank you so much for listening, for downloading the podcast, and all of your hard work for your own practice. It's awe-inspiring. Thank you for that hard work. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.